Let's enter weird showbiz history.
Chevy Chase made some kind of remark on television about Cary.
I made a joke. It was actually quite funny. Cary didn't think it was funny.
And I talked to him. I said, what's going on with this? Well, I'm not going to let him get away with it. I don't care if I was, but I'm not.
If I had been Cary Grant, would I have sued? I would have dropped it. You know, particularly if he was worried about people hearing it.
Hollywood, a place where giants once walked the earth, and where sometimes the clowns who follow try to trip them. Two men from two different dimensions of fame, on a collision course set in a place of profound terror and dread. The Chat Show. This is the story about a bad joke, a furious icon, and a multi-million-dollar smackdown. Chevy Chase versus Cary Grant.
Good evening. I'm God. Here's the news.
In one corner, Chevy Chase, the darling and the demon of the new age, the first superstar born from the chaotic brilliance of Saturday Night Live. A man whose comedic brilliance was matched only by his unparalleled ability to fall down with panache.
I've taken a definite turn for the better. Nothing's gonna hurt me anymore.
In the other, a man who patented charm. The definition of movie star, icon, legend, actor, other synonyms. A star whose name is synonymous with sophistication, and whose suits always seem to be perfectly pressed, even after fending off a giant crop duster. Mr. Cary Grant. Their paths, it seemed, were never meant to cross. One a disruptor of the old guard, intent on tripping over its hallowed traditions. The other a cherished relic of the golden age, who likely kept his old guard status polished daily. A curious confluence of events, a mere twist of fate, or perhaps a momentary lapse of judgment would bring these two disparate worlds crashing together.
Needless to say, this is totally expected on my part.
By 1980, Chevy Chase was a comedic supernova, an agent of chaos who had weaponized irony, convinced that the entire world was his straight man. He'd left SNL as star, cementing his status as a burgeoning movie lead with 78's Foul Play, alongside The Horn, earning Golden Globe nominations for Best Actor and New Star of the Year. Paired once again with his own Kate Hepburn, Chase was establishing a niche as a charming but bumbling romantic lead. Indeed, at the height of his early fame, some, perhaps those in need of corrective lenses, even dared to suggest that Chase possessed the potential to be the next Cary Grant.
When you went into film work and they said, okay, this is going to be the 70s and 80s new Cary Grant,
Yeah.
did that strike you as preposterous right out of the box?
Yeah. I made a joke. It was actually quite funny. Cary didn't think it was funny.
On September the 25th, 1980, Chevy was a guest on Tom Snyder's Tomorrow Show, in a TV studio that had all the intimacy of a therapist's office, but with more cigarette smoke and a much larger audience. On this particular evening, Chase, flying high on a cocktail of fame, supreme confidence, and Caddyshack cachet, sat down to chat. The conversation was loose, too loose, veering into the irreverent, the provocative, and possibly actionable. He was asked about these comparisons made between him and Grant, and this is how he responded.
Cary Grant is brilliant, elegant and athletic, can deliver lines with great humor, and he can also give you everything that Jimmy Stewart and the great actors from that generation could deliver.
Then, in a moment of comedic inspiration that he would soon regret with every fiber of his being, he affected a limp wrist, lisped in a stereotypical voice, "I understand he is a homo. What a gal." It was a comedic drive-by delivered with a shrug and a smirk. In Chevy's mind, it was just another edgy punchline. In Cary Grant's mind, it was the sound of a very expensive bell being rung.
I said, no, that's silly. Nobody can be the next Cary Grant. He was great, and I understand he's a homo. Just like that. That kind of...
And I get, well, kind of unreasonable about things like that.
A screen heartthrob since the early 30s, he was now largely retired. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he turned down numerous TV or film appearances, wanting audiences to remember him as he was on the screen, not now a silver-haired man wearing glasses. And his public image wasn't an act, it was a fortress, meticulously constructed over decades. A fortress with a zero-tolerance policy for people throwing slurs at the metaphorical drawbridge. And why was it that he hated shit being talked about him? Archie Leach was born into poverty in Bristol, England. When he was 9, his mother Elsie vanished. His dad told him that she died. It was a lie. In reality, his father had committed her to a lunatic asylum. Archie wouldn't discover that she was alive for another 20 years. One could argue it instilled in him a deep-seated mistrust of the world and an obsessive, all-consuming need for control. He couldn't control his past, but he could control his present with an iron fist. Escaping to America, he changed his walk, his accent, his name.
The last man who said that to me was Archie Leach, just a week before he cut his throat.
Is that so?
Cary Grant was born. A suit of armor, a brand. And he learned under the old Hollywood studio system that the brand was everything. As long as he was able, he wanted to correct the falsehoods and half-truths about his life and his career. Which is why the persistent rumors about his sexuality, particularly his time living with Randolph Scott, they weren't just gossip to him. His former wife, Betsy Drake, said the following about those rumors.
Why would I believe that Cary was homosexual when we were busy fucking?
Grant wore many outfits in his career, but his favorite suit was a law one. Lawsuits. In his later years, he became one of the most prolifically litigious stars in Hollywood. Tom Snyder's show was a powder keg, and Chevy Chase strolled in, whistling, lighting a match. His "I'm Chevy Chase and you're not" attitude would pratfall into someone who was definitely Cary Grant.
Chevy Chase on a television show made a crack that Cary was a homo.
Peter Bogdanovich would say it was the only time he'd heard Cary angry. "I don't have anything against homosexuals, I just don't happen to be one." A lawsuit claiming slander was filed in November of 1980 for $10 million, which in 1980, for context, was a fuckload of money. Chase's references held Grant up to shame, ridicule, and humiliation.
Chase's statements are completely and absolutely false, and have no basis whatsoever in truth and fact.
This was no laughing matter for the man who'd once tangoed with Eva Marie Saint on Mount Rushmore. To a degree, he'd find sexuality speculation amusing, rumors spread by jealous men.
Guy sitting in a movie theater with his girl, he sees me on a screen and he said, "You know, he's gay." "Well, you know, he's just done me a favor." I said, "How do you say that?" "Well, if I come to that town, which girl do you think is going to be the first one in my hotel to see if it's true or not?"
But this was very different. This was said on television in such a demeaning, dismissive way.
You're going to be the next Cary Grant.
No, sir, I'm not going to say it again.
This struck Chase like a Christmas present dumpster. The book I'm Chevy Chase and You're Not quotes him as saying that he had no desire to defame this man. Chase embraced this public image as an arrogant fool who almost wanted you to dislike him and knew the comment was juvenile and low grade, and to him in that moment, the joke made him look like an idiot. It wasn't just a cheap quip in order to humiliate an icon.
The joke to me was the word homo.
Right.
It was just people don't use that word. I mean,
After recording the episode, Snyder suggested in the direct aftermath of removing that comment, but Chevy thought, hey, Grant would find it funny. It was the comedic equivalent of spray painting a mohawk on Mount Rushmore. The problem and the fatal miscalculation was that Chevy failed to realize that this particular monument could get down off the mountain, walk to the courthouse, and sue him into the next century. He wasn't just poking a myth, he was actually poking a heavily armed corporation of one. He'd brought a whoopee cushion to a gunfight.
He apparently enjoyed suing. He was in and out of court.
he was a very litigious guy, I understand, yeah.
To him, it was just a silly joke. But the legal papers arriving with an undeniable thud on his doorstep suggested otherwise.
The fact is, I was not aware of the fact that people had surmised that about him or guessed that about him, and that he had gone through some hell over that.
Attempts to apologize privately fell on deaf ears. Grant's attorneys were thorough, the resolve unshakable. The remark, tasteless as it may have been, was not delivered with a documentarian solemnity. It was a comedian trying to get a laugh on a late-night talk show. The intent wasn't malice. It was just a misguided attempt at being edgy. A defense that works wonders in a comedy club, but tends to dissolve under the harsh fluorescent lighting of a lawyer's office.
And you can't always talk your way out of situations.
Not always, but much of the time I can.
As Chase and Grant, with attorneys in tow, sat on plush sofas in an LA law office, the Chevy camp realized the outlook was bleak, though ended up on the floor laughing when Chevy's attorney asked Cary Grant how he felt when he watched Chase make those remarks.
My lawyer said, "Mr. Grant, how do you feel when Mr. Chase?" He said, "I felt I wanted to sue." It was so funny.
Chevy claimed that the whole thing was worth it for that funny remark, but it was a remark that cost him $150,000. As part of the settlement, Chevy was ordered to make a public apology on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, and in a moment of genuine care, Chevy persuaded Cary to drop it.
As a settlement, you will pay this, and you will go on the Carson Show and publicly apologize. The point would be, don't bring it up again, really, you know.
A chance meeting at the 1984 Olympics, Cary Grant, in his ever-classy style, invited Chevy Chase to dinner, something he hastily accepted.
Yeah.
So he sues for 10
million. It was very nice to me once we'd settled. It was very sweet.
And he takes the $100,000 and then he
takes the $100,000 and laughs.
And so the feud was extinguished. But Chevy had learned a terrifying lesson that some lines, even in the name of comedy, can come with astronomical hourly rates attached. Cary Grant didn't just sue a comedian, he sued a force of nature. Chevy had cultivated a reputation for leaving a trail of scorched earth, bruised egos, pissed off colleagues wherever he goes. The infamous backstage brawl with Bill Murray at SNL.
At one point, you had a run-in with Bill Murray and fists were flying.
Yeah, the first time I came back.
The notoriously difficult behavior that led to his public fallout with the creator of the show Community.
He made some remarks that were deemed to be racist, a comment that he made, and I think that was kind of it.
During a charity gala speech, he turned to Disney CEO Michael Eisner, requesting, "May I pee in your mouth?"
Chevy turns to him and looks out at the audience and said, "How many of you people would like to see me piss in this guy's mouth right now?" The audience went ape shit nuts and the other half gasped.
The guy never met a bridge he wouldn't gleefully incinerate. But with Cary Grant, it was different. For a man who collected feuds like other people collect vintage trilbies, a man who famously never backed down from anyone, this was a sobering moment, voicing his sincere regrets publicly. Interviewed in 1989 by Bob Costas, a discussion of the incident brought out a rare sense of Chase vulnerability.
Exactly. You know, it was stupid because for me it may be funny, and for my friends it's kind of inside funny. The joke being it's the word homo that's funny.
That's what I was getting to.
To the gay community, that's not funny. It's like saying that's a bad thing to be, and I wouldn't be it.
And now it was the carefully constructed edifice of Chase, the comedic lightning rod, cracked, revealing a man who understood the weight of his words and the impact they could have.
But you can't. There's no way to justify that kind of error. It was bad perspective on my part. That's over with, but it was a dumb thing to do, and I did apologize, and he knows that.
Good night.
And so the rebel comedian was forced to bend the knee. He'd intended to prove that the new school of comedy feared nothing, but instead proved that the old school of litigation was very much in session, a curious intersection of old Hollywood grace and new Hollywood bravado. A reminder that even in the dazzling, often absurd world of show business, there are consequences. And sometimes the most profound moments aren't the loudest of laughs, but the sincerest of apologies. So what do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into weird showbiz history, don't forget to like and subscribe for more strange and fascinating stories from the world of entertainment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.